Is the United States senior leadership intentionally deceiving the American people when it comes to matters related to the Russia-Ukraine war? That's a question that we have to answer, because based on things that have come out in the last 24 hours, that question has to be asked. There's another question, though it's not completely clear at this point, if it's either intentional misinformation or does it represent that there are some significant failures and weaknesses in our senior officials' ability to accurately understand the world around them. Either way, it's bad news for America, because that means that our senior leaders are either doing something that besides what they're telling us, and they're deceiving us and telling us one thing is true while they really want to do something different, or they don't know what they're talking about. Now, I know you may hear things like that a lot, and that's kind of common. Basically, anytime somebody doesn't like what someone's doing, they make those kind of comments. But as I'm about to show you, this is a different category. This is something that's really troubling. Now, at stake right now is, what is the United States Congress going to do about funding for Ukraine? It's been held up twice already. There's supposed to have been something in the budget for on September the 30th, before the end of the fiscal year. There was another possibility one when they got the continuing resolution that moved us into January. Now there's another one coming up when they're going to decide if the government's going to shut down next month. We'll have to see how that works out. But the question is, should the United States give them money, and if so, towards what end? Now, apparently, the administration is very keen to want to do that. They want to give this money. Now, if they come before the United States people and say, here's the reason why we want to do this, here's how much money it's going to cost, here's what we're going to do with it, here's how long we think this might go. Now, you can consider whether you want to do it or not. You can consider if you agree with it or not, and then that's fair. Everything's above board. That's not what's happening here. Let me show you 3 separate senior leaders yesterday who went before the American people to make some pretty aggressive statements, and include some things that are absolutely untrue. Here's the first one. We're going to start off with the President of the United States, Joe Biden.
The entire world is watching. What will the United States do? And think, if we don't support Ukraine, what's the rest of the world going to do? What's Japan going to do, which is supporting Ukraine now? What's going to happen in terms of the G7? What's going to happen in terms of our NATO allies? What are they going to do? If we walk away now, it'll only embolden other would-be aggressors. So I'm calling on Congress to do something and do the right thing, to stand with the people of Ukraine, stand against the tyranny of Putin, stand for freedom, literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done.
Okay, so first of all, just on the surface of it, when you say, what is Japan going to think? What is the G7 going to think? What is NATO going to think if we just walk away from Ukraine? Well, now, first of all, nobody's talking about just walking away from Ukraine. The question is, if we're going to give money, and if so, how much? But I don't see any appetite among anyone in Congress to literally just go from 100 miles an hour to zero. We'll see how that's going to work out. But that's not what's at stake here. But the idea that then the President of the United States is saying that if we don't keep supporting Ukraine, then what's Japan going to think? Well, let me ask it in a different way. If Japan, the G7, or NATO sees the United States trying to pursue the militarily unattainable, if they see us being patently unwilling to recognize what's going on the ground and continuing to try to accomplish something that's not achievable in a time frame and in a cost that makes any sense at all, and if they see us trying to blindly ignoring the fact that on the ground in this war, after 22 months and after a full year of the United States backing and the NATO allies backing Ukraine with everything from tanks, planes, artillery pieces, rockets, intelligence support, training, everything you can imagine, and it did not dent the line. It almost made no difference at all. That's what people see. So now you want to know what people around the world are going to think if we don't do something. I'm asking what they're going to think if we continue to do something, continue to support something that is patently failing. That's the first question. But now then, let's move over to the Senate. Here's what the minority leader, Chuck Schumer, said on the same topic.
Many Republican members say they want to do Ukraine. If they themselves can't put a border amendment that would pass, then what the heck are we doing? Let's remember three things as we move forward. One, how important Ukraine is. It's a turning point in Western civilization. This is a historic moment, and this cannot be delayed any longer.
That boggles the mind, to suggest that what's going on in Ukraine is a turning point in Western civilization. I mean, are you serious? I mean, this war's been going on for 22 months, and it has definitely consequences and ramifications throughout the region, especially for Europe. But to say that at the turning point of Western civilization is a hyperbole that's way out of line and way over the top, and there's no actual evidence of it. I mean, after 22 months of war, you see that Russia has a sliver of land, about 17% of Ukraine, which they've held almost from the beginning. They lost a good chunk of it after about 8 or 9 months of the war, but they've held on to that 17% from the beginning. But that's it. They haven't been able to gain any more, even though they've been trying. And as I've been arguing in previous deep dive episodes, the risk is that is going to expand if we don't change our tactics, if we don't change our behaviors and our strategies. There is a risk that if we just keep blindly doing the same thing, that Russia could gain more territory. But that's probably all they're going to do. They're going to get some more territory because they don't have the capacity to continue to go further. That's one point. We're going to get back to that one in a second here. But for the leader of the Senate to be saying that this money has to go because it's going to change Western civilization, then not provide any evidence for it. I mean, he doesn't even say because of A, B, C, or D. He just makes this blanket claim because he's trying to say something grandiose. He's trying to say something that would make the listener go, wow, I didn't realize that much was at stake, and then not examine it. So that's point number two. Now we get to point number three. And I've saved this one for last because to me, especially as a military man, this one is the most egregious to me. So we have John Kirby, who's one of the senior White House spokesmen, who is a former admiral, ergo someone who should know more than I do. I was a lieutenant colonel. One would imagine that an admiral would know more, certainly had more experience and had got to a higher rank and had higher positions. Here's what he had to say yesterday.
There should be a genuine concern about what happens if you just let Putin go, if you just let him have Ukraine. Because make no mistake, he hasn't given up his strategic goal of subjugating the entire country. He doesn't believe it ought to exist as a sovereign state. And so we can't support Ukraine. Their chief advisor yesterday said they're likely to lose this war if they lose U.S. support. And Putin gets all of Ukraine, then what? Then where does he go? Because right then, he's up against the eastern flank of NATO. And if you think the cost of supporting Ukraine is high now, just imagine how much higher it's going to be, not just in national treasure, but in American blood, if he starts going after one of our NATO allies. Because American boots would very much have to be involved if Mr. Putin is let to have this strategic victory in Ukraine and then perhaps goes after one of our NATO allies.
Okay, that is so over the top. It's just hard for me to even imagine. There is no evidence that Putin is going to be rolling west and trying to take into a fight in NATO, or that he even can take even all of Ukraine. See, Kirby there is claiming that that Russia, if we don't take action, is going to conquer all of Ukraine, which he hasn't been able to do beyond 17% in 22 months. But whatever, okay, sure, they're going to somehow now take all of it. And then after expending all of the resources that it would take to do that, all of the troops that it would take to take the other 80% of the country that they haven't been able to do now, then somehow that he's going to be poised to roll west into NATO. So walk with me here. Consider Putin so far has barely been able to hold on to less than 20% of the one country on his border who has no air force to speak of, no navy, and no allies that will come to his aid on the ground that will fight to him. None of those things. 20%, almost 2 years of fighting. And you're going to tell me, Mr. Kirby, that you're going to make Americans afraid that, oh my gosh, we have to do this. Otherwise, our troops are going to have to go fight in a war. Our troops are going to have to spill our blood, because if Putin gets here, then he's going to roll into let's consider that what that means now. Here's what he's not telling you. Here's what he's trying to ask you to logically believe. Putin couldn't do any of the things I just told you to do. But now he's going to go into a 32-member alliance with very modern air forces, air defense, robust navies, much larger than the Russian one, and all kinds of capacity, among the richest on the planet. And they've got hundreds of thousands of troops that are all fresh and have not been seen any combat. Now, what possible sense did that? How can you make any kind of claim that what President Biden said is right, what this leader of the Senate said is right, and what John Kirby, a former admiral, is saying? None of those things are lined up with what we see on the ground. Here's what we do see on the ground. We see that Ukraine did everything that they could. They have performed heroically, admirably. They did prevent Russia from overcoming and taking Kiev in the opening days. That was at risk, but Russia was not anywhere near as capable as anybody thought they were at the first, and they showed it. But they weren't incapable either, because they did capture a pretty large swath of the country, and they've held on to it. And now then they have become better. Their military industrial complex is now cranked into high gear. They're recruiting more people. Their army's getting larger. They're getting a much larger stockpile of artillery shells, drones, rockets, missiles, and building even more aircraft. And that includes both rotary wing and fighter aircraft. So all those things are on the rise. So the idea that Ukraine is suddenly going to overcome all that when they haven't been able to do it in 22 months is just unreal. Just like it's unrealistic to think that Russia is going to roll into a 32-member alliance, it's even more unrealistic to suggest that no matter what we do for Ukraine, that after 22 months of this war that they've suffered, are going to somehow unseat all of that combat power that Russia is building. That's the reality, folks. That's what's really going on the ground. Here's what our government should be doing. We should be doing a sober assessment of all the things I just mentioned on there. Russian capabilities, Ukrainian capabilities, industrial capabilities on all sides, ability to produce more ammunition and weapons over a long period of time, and look at the manpower pool on each side. Once you do that, you come to the very clear conclusion that the war cannot be won militarily by Ukraine, no matter how much you wish it could be so, no matter how much you would desire to see Putin punished for the invasion that he made in February 2022. All those things are aspirational. We want Putin to lose. We want Ukraine to win. Okay, terrific. There's a case to be made for that. I can understand why a lot of people would think that. It doesn't stand up to examination. So for our leaders to stand up now to the American people and say, we're either going to try and deceive you, to try to make you believe that Russia is capable of rolling into, that our own troops are, for crying out loud, may have to go and fight and bleed and die if we don't do this, it's just untrue. So either they know it's untrue and they're trying to deceive you and scare you into supporting this, no matter what your eyes see after almost 2 years of warfare, or they don't understand the most simple, basic things of how you assess combat power, of how you assess what may or may not happen on the battlefield. I don't know which of those is worse. I just know they're both bad for the American people. And folks, we need to wake up here. We need people to recognize that they're being sold a bill of goods from our government, or our government has some significant needs that needs to be replaced. I don't know which it is, but one of the great things about living in a democracy is that we get to say things like this. We get to share our views. And when we don't like what the government's doing, we can do something about it. Now, whether that's in an election, if you want to hire somebody else to be president next time that can recognize some of these things, certainly that's what you should do. But in the meantime, we should be calling this out. We should be you send a letter to your representative, send a letter to the president. Do your own, if you have the ability to do so, write articles. I mean, whatever you want to do, go on social media, share with all of your friends. Things like this is what they need to know. Don't be fooled by some of these claims, because you'll see some of those clips on some of the major media shows, and they'll just have them say it there, and they don't have this deep dive that you're getting right now to explain why that's nonsense and why it's bad for us. Because here's the second or the third layer of what is going on here is, regardless of which way it was, misinformation or just bad judgment, it's costing us. Our national security capacity is unquestionably diminished because of 22 months of war. We have given 5,000 military vehicles of various sorts to Ukraine. We have given millions of artillery shells, hundreds of thousands of various kinds of other rounds and missiles, anti-aircraft missiles, anti-tank missiles, and hundreds of millions of rounds of various other kinds of things. Now, we're trying to replace those. They talk about that all the time. But it's going to be multiple years just to replace what's already lost. So we're going to be a lessened capacity if our needs have to be defended. If, God forbid, we should go to war unexpectedly somewhere, our capacity is going to be diminished. On top of the money that we keep spending. We keep sending all this money abroad. And as Senator Paul said on our show not long ago, there's not just piles of money sitting around just waiting to be spent somewhere that we want to. It gets borrowed. And usually that means it comes from China. At least a good portion of that does. And our national debt continues to grow. That's bad for our country now. It's bad for our country in the future. Folks, it's time to wake up and let your voice be heard. We're showing you things that are going on right now. And now we're going to ask you to do your part and expand this everywhere you can so people know what's really going on in the truth. That's all we have for you today. We ask you to like and subscribe so that you can continue to get the information here that you're just not going to get anywhere else. And we will remain unintimidated and uncompromised in bringing you the truth that you most need. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time on Deep Dive.